So we'll see if we can do PoCS 3D, which will be even more chill than this, but we'll be focused on papers completely. Yeah. Let's see if we can get this one to work.
Gentlemen, yesterday I moved Cabletown's customer service to a part of India that has no phones. We're now providing the same level of service to our subscribers at zero the cost. This is a Six Sigma Wheel of Domination. It's a motivational tool I used back at GE, and it will be replacing Cabletown's kitten and spaghetti. Once this circle is completely filled in, we will be a perfect company. Kenneth, I've been thinking about something a lot lately, something that's never bothered me until now.
Me too. Where are all the baby pigeons?
Happiness. I've started to wonder if I'm happy.
Well, sir, if you have to ask, then you're not. It's like when a pig says, if I can communicate with you telepathically, do I have a soul? And then you're like, no, duh, into the slaughtering chute.
If you're right, I have a problem, and every problem can be solved. As I was taught at Six Sigma, analyze, strategize, succeed. ASS. I'm going to crush this problem. Time for an ass attack.
Cabletown shares closing at a new high today. CEO Jack Donaghy, who rang the opening bell last week, has emphasized the growth potential in the...
Now I am the sensei. The parking space closest to the door is mine.
So what happens is Apple thinks it's like better for me to hear it, which is so weird. Oh, this is terrible. Is that religion? Faith. Okay.
Since we last spoke, I've been in a spiral, an upward spiral. Oh, that's not a thing. So who's happy now, Marcel? Well, if you have to ask the question and answer it, I am. String cheese with a tooth stuck in it. The wheel.
Sorry, this I don't know why. I just couldn't help myself. We don't need that. You string cheese with a tooth stuck in it. It's amazing. Yeah. So it's interesting to see just how much, at least in popular culture, like this sort of focus on happiness, right? And he was the perfect example in there. To have, and I know I played it earlier in the semester, but it's sort of the Six Sigma thing is kind of funny. Okay. Wow. You don't need to see my messages. What a terrible, terrible operating system. All right, so well, this is really, and I kind of had this idea that, I don't know if you saw it in Teams, you could ask me anything and see what we come up with. But, you know, I know we've run out of the semester. I had one thing I wanted to show you that this is kind of fun. Anyway, but that happiness is a mislead is the big story, I think, now, right? So it's like, it's these other fundamental dimensions of meaning. Makes a lot more sense. So 12. So this is just about 12 and about, right, we have some weird numbers floating around. And I guess I've said this, like I spend a lot of time training in the basement. There's a lot of things that go for 60 minutes and I break them down all the time into like pieces, right? 12 minutes, all these. So they divide nicely, right? And that's not an accident. This is pretty ancient stuff. And I kind of made this one on the 12th version of PoCS, dodecaPoCS. Had this stuff up. So 12, this is really, you know, people get a little carried away, but 12 is a superior, highly composite number. Mathematicians trying to make the things they do sound really awesome, you know. Highly totient and super abundant. So they're mad things, but it's also a sublime number. So both the number and sum of the positive factors are perfect numbers, which is, bonkers stuff. That's like getting into some numerology. So, we have 12 everywhere. And we have a bunch of other numbers everywhere. The French came along with the 100 thing, and everyone's like, oh, we should all have decimal. It's the right way to do things. But it's pretty weird, actually. So again, we've made a horrible mistake, right? We've made a couple of big mistakes with numbers. The other one is pi. Pi is does anyone understand, know about the pi problem? Okay, all right. Let's have a little detour on the pi. This is stuff where the aliens come down and they're like, there's a lot of stuff wrong, but they're going to go to some fundamentals and like, did they get this right? So the Tau Manifesto. So there's a book. Let's see. I think there's you don't have to believe in this, but Tau Day 2010. So it's we've got it sitting here. Pi is circumference divided by diameter, and of course we say 2 pi r, right? So the 2 goes with the radius, and that's pi r squared. So if you differentiate that, you get 2 pi r. It feels like, right. So and it's been around for a long time, so we're kind of stuck on that one. But then we get it. There's a lot in here, and I won't. But I'll just show you sort of one. Yeah, so for example here, right? So this is degrees, which connects back to what I'm talking about with numbers being awesome, right? So we like 360 is, there for a reason. So this is in a lot of people's heads, right? 90 degrees, 180. I mean, we talk about it, I think I mentioned the other day, like 540s or something, if you're doing things on skis or whatever, snowboards, people use it. They don't say pi. What would it be, like a 5.5 pi reverse Snuggerborg or something, right? I don't know.
3 radian turn.
No one says that. So this is what of course we have 2 pi. So this is burned into your heads, right? So we know that 2 pi is the thing, and we have 2 pi everywhere. We have it sitting in the normal distribution, right? Little root 2 pi at the front, whatever. So if we go around to here, it's pi, and that's what I was playing around with. We're trying to do the theta thing for putting the power danger stuff into radio coordinates, and it's I don't think it's going to work out. But anyway, you go plus pi this way, minus pi this way if you like, or 0 to 2 pi, which is a little weird because it could more easily be this is half the way round. So what's tau? Tau is 2 pi. So if we had just said the most important, the ratio we want, and if you think about dimensional analysis kind of stuff, where you say, okay, we've got 2 dimensions for a circle. Let's say, we realize there's really only one. There's the radius or the diameter and the circumference. And if we did that thing right at the start of PoCS, where we say, okay, let's list all the things we know about circles, areas, and whatever, have them listed, and their dimensions are length squared. Right? There isn't time or whatever. There's no other stuff. We'd realize, oh, okay, these things all have to be. There's some combination of them equals a constant, right? So you could say circumference is some constant times the radius or the diameter, and so if it's times the diameter, it's pi times that. If it's the radius, it's and radius is very natural. Circumference, the diameter is maybe a little bit funny. Radius is a nice, like if you're measuring something about a circle, it feels kind of right. So you could quibble about which thing's sort of the fundamental thing to measure, but you would, if you really built it from radius and circumference, you'd say circumference is some number times the radius. And you'd go out and measure it, some druids, you'd probably, sacrifice a few people along the way and do all those fun things. And with sticks measuring all sorts of stuff, and that'd be 6.2 something, or 44/7, or whatever you want to do. So this is what it would look like with tau, right? You go around, tau would be one loop. So there are Taoists, and then there are, or Taoists or whatever, but then there are the Taoists, and there is this insurgent group within mathematics that's trying to change everything. This is a long piece. I mean, you can see I'm just over here, right? There's like, okay, let's talk about everything and what if it's better with, yeah, Euler's thing. Everyone loves this thing. I mean, when I found this out, I was like, oh my God. The beautiful equation. Da, da, da. And then it says, well, it would be, because e to the I pi, of course, is just going around halfway and it's exciting and whatever, but e to the I tau is 1. That's the loop. Anyway, you should know that there are Taoists lurk amongst you. Imagine trying to change the world with that, though. I mean, we're really stuck with stuff, right? Like, we're really stuck. The Imperial System is interesting. It's hanging on, The U.S. is the U.S. is really stuck on that one.
Inches are so hard for me to reason about. I just have no clue.
You don't like him?
No, I was trying to make the plots for the presentation and get the sizing right for the slides.
Oh.
And I was trying to think about because you have to put the dimensions.
Not pixels or whatever.
Yeah, no.
No, you.
Well, you can do it, but the example I was doing in inches, and I was trying, so I used that, and I tried doing it, and I could not think about this, so then I used centimeters, and it was easy.
That's interesting because it's.
I feel like miles probably because I've used it, but I feel like it would be very easy to understand kilometers because it's I understand what a meter is, 1,000 meters. It's pretty easy to I think visualize. What you need is a ruler.
This right? This is inches.
Something like that. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's weird. Yeah, 2 point. What is it? 4, yeah, 25, 40, I think even. Yeah, for millimeters into inches. I mean, an inch is a pretty good sort of little human scale thing. I mean, centimeter, it's fine too, right? But it's a mess. And I grew up kind of with both of them, so we're always converting, and 1,609 meters in a mile. So, out on a track, there's an extra little line, it's kind of bent around. This is where you start if you want to run a mile. You have to run that little bit, and then 4 loops, and you'll get a mile.
What's weird is that, at least when you're talking about distance, it's always metric. When you're talking about weight, it's always imperial.
Oh my God! Why? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe that's just when it overheard, but that's what I see the most.
So it's a kludge. Yeah, that's a place where you don't want to. Right, you don't want to get the numbers wrong. I mean, so the point here is that 12 is one of these. This is a long time ago where people established these things. Are we going to change how many hours there are in a day? Probably not, right? People have played around with week lengths, by the way. 7 was not. Okay, we should look at this too. These are just. I like the word speak feel, which I made up, but it's how does a word feel when you say it? And 12 and 12th and 12ish, they're good numbers. Yes, we have a couple of places where we have 12. Dozen. So we have the dozenilists or whatever it is. You're familiar with this thing, right? This is some excitement for Julia. So this is just out of control. Okay, Julia should say what it is. Look at this magnificent object, which is excellently retro. I mean, it's not a gray background, but it's pretty Web 1.0. So, 1, 4, right? You can do this sort of thing, right? It's going to 16. The squares, right? It'll tell you, here's the formula for it. I don't know if there are others, but oh my God, there's so much stuff. Wow.
Here's all the information.
So it's pretty awesome, right? It's a lookup thing. So what is yours?
It's A3388.
Oh my God. So, of course, A3.
A338819.
Oh my God. The entries in the rows of an n by n multiplied by Yeah. Right. So it's just that you have a 1 by 1, 2 by 2, 3 by 3, 4. Right.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool because, like, as you go on, if you're drawing a random from it, you expect to get 0.
Yeah. You get more and more zeros.
But the sum keeps going up,
Nice.
which is kind of cool.
That's good. That's good. I mean, there's endless joy with sequences and things, right? In terms of madnesses. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
So how does like what you enter, like the 8338819 translate?
It's an index.
So it's truly it's truly its thing. So this is it was a search, but Julia's the important memory person here. But if we'd done 120023, I don't know how many you have to go out here to make this unique, right?
Yeah, it would pull it up. I don't know when.
I mean, this was sort of a puzzle thing we would have in math as kids a lot, which is like here are the first 4 numbers in a sequence. What's the next one?
They have so many sequences. Like, I have a lot of sequences. If you think of a sequence, it's probably going to be in there, which is kind of fun.
Oh, so that's why like creating one game is like.
It was really exciting, and it got approved by NJ Islam himself, which is
There's no sequence approved.
because there was argument over whether it should be approved or not. People were like, oh, interesting enough, like behavior-wise, and then NJ Islam.
Come on, we're mathematicians. I mean, everything is interesting. I can't believe
I was about to say,
yeah, come on. If that would be terrible.
These are the people that just do real analysis, right? Like,
There's a lot of passion behind it,
Oh, yeah.
People have passionate feelings about what should and shouldn't be in it.
Okay, so universal numbers. So, of course, if you start with The Simpsons, you 4 is going to be, we're going to be in the octal system, right? There's some arguments about whether this is really an accident of evolution, or if you kind of run the thing again, you end up with 5. Like, right? People. I don't know about that. But we could be, and certainly in because of computers, we have things that have 8s and 6s, and we're happy with them. But we've stuck with these at least 360 degrees. Of course, there's a lot of 60s. The directions go into, we also call them minutes and seconds, right? 360 degrees, minutes, seconds. Truly spectacular. There's an argument. I don't know about that at all, but that's sort of a universality thing, right? You run the thing again with the slime molds and the bloops and whatever, and you end up with organisms running around. I don't know. It is always kind of enjoyable to just sort of think, all these vertebrates, right? All stretched giraffes, us, cats, like we've got the same plan basically. It's
so giraffes with the same number of.
Yeah, same number, right? Yeah.
So they're such a fan of
I don't. It works, right? They seem pretty happy. Have you ever seen a sad giraffe? They look kind of happy. I mean, I have no idea. I'm just kidding.
I've never seen a giraffe.
There's a problem. Right?
So maybe also big giraffe is only feeding the images that you think of giraffes.
Well, the important sequence of numbers for us is 7, 12, 5. What is that? 20. It adds up to 24.
On the whole week, the days, half the day you're awake, and the number of days in the week you work.
No, it's to do with the giraffe thing. We're inside a. It's a vertebrate thing. It's a vertebrate thing.
Okay.
You got seven cervical, 12 thoracic, and 5 down here, and they do different things, right? The lumbar is much more of a. So it's sort of like you go from hinge things to like universal ones to more hinge to more universal ones to more hinge, right? Where like there's more universal than hingey kind of things, more universal. This is more of hinge in here, more universal, like in terms of this contraption that we are. Yeah.
We got pulleys.
We do. It's a problem. Trigger Yeah.
This thing where it's like, here's some sequences, here's a part of the sequence, what comes next. I always failed these as a kid because I'd be like literally anything.
No, you're right. And a friend of mine would complain about this too. He's like, you know, like I could put it 12, and here is my rule for it. You're right. So they are a bit funny, yeah. But people, there's sort of this game where it's like, what's the most likely, or what is it that the human who made this probably thought?
Somebody, you need to specify like the repeating cycle length, and then it's okay. Like it repeats within this cycle.
But it is, yeah. It's definitely, you could see.
If you don't, it's like literally anything is fine.
Right, sure, one.
Yeah.
I know they're interesting puzzles. This is 4,000 years old. This you know, at least one start of it, but using 60. I mean, there's some pretty weird things. Like, is it 5,000? If I got that wrong. 120. Like Plato had some idea of like the perfect size for a city, right? And it's a Plato city size. He'd be pretty disappointed. What was the ideal city? Come on. No, number, population. It's just a maniac. Yeah. I don't know. That's not coming up for me properly. Plato, Minnesota. Google, you dummy. It's like 50. It's like it's one. I should. Anyway, we'll see. It might pop up here. Yeah. So 60 is good, right? Because you can divide it by these numbers, right? Of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the first failure here. 10 is okay too. Also 12, 15, and 20. So you can break these things down really nicely. So if you're trying to get through an hour, as in a lecture where you're suffering and sick of the thing, then you can break it down, and you're 4/5 of the way through. You can play little games with your head, and then you get to 10 minutes, and it's like, okay, that's 600 seconds, and I'm gonna break that. Anyway, that's what I was doing this morning. So, duodecimal, dozenal. I think, does that link to a? Yeah, there's a dozenal society. Duodecimal. Is it down here? Is there a link to it? Wow, so much. Look at this. They're trying to fight on. See also. No? Okay. All right. It's not there. All right. Yeah, this is good stuff. So, and they did it actually as, it's interesting because they did have sets of 10 here. This was still broken into 10s. So it did have a 10 built into it, but, right, there's these are, boop, 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 boop. And they just kind of had a 10 unit and a 1, just stacking them. Is that right for the 18? That one. Oh, it like has little. Oh, sorry, 3, 2, and then yeah. What's that? Base 60. Yeah, I mean, then you could work over it. So then you have this kind of madness. Yeah, highly composite numbers. So these are as you go down through numbers, these are how many divisors they have, right? So this is just counting down. This is, going up through numbers. This is 500, so it'll be 501 to 1,000. So the first 5,000 positive integers, and then it's simply a plot of how many divisors they have. And so, this is 24, right? 0, 10, 20, 24. So when you get to 360, there are 24 divisors. When you get to 240, it looks like there are 22. 180 has 18, yeah. And so what's going on is, as you go down, you can see the special ones pop out. Of course, it's going to be fairly quick to start with, but it's 1, 2, 4, 6, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 120, 180, 240, 360. So as you go down through these are the ones that pop, that you're doing better than you were before in terms of clean divisions, ways to divide the thing up. And of course, primes are the opposite, right? So primes are no good, right? So if we had 37 minutes in an hour, well, it would be fun, but pretty dumb. Yeah. Okay, so we didn't do that. And so really, we kind of 360 is about the highest that we sort of see naturally in what people have established over a long period of time. Yeah, there are efforts to metricize the day. Let's make it have 10 hours. It's really tough though. The calendar screws you up, right? The 360, like you can't quite do it. Let me see if I can find. So it's a natural number with more divisors than any smaller number. So these are good. Yeah, I thought I had it. 5040 is the next one. And Plato thought that was a optimal city population because you could divide it into these different modules that will be even, which is a nice idea, right? Like you could say, okay, this group does, whatever. They can vote in different ways. Yeah.
It's such a small city.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah. He probably ran out of gas at that point. And then people went kind of bonkers. So there you go. It's one of the sequences. So it's a fun, the sequence, if someone gives it to you, it's a very special sequence actually. Yeah. And the ones are, these ones are, well, I've highlighted that one, but these are the big ones that we have in our natural, not natural, but in human countings. People really get carried away with this, and they start to do things like number of divisors divided by the number itself to some power of epsilon. And so that these are highly composite numbers, and then there are superior highly composite numbers, and they're a little more sparse, right? It's an extra requirement. Then there's super abundant numbers, and then colossally abundant numbers, they're actually finite numbers, right? Apparently, there's only 449. So they're getting a little bonkers at this point. No, this is math. Okay, I don't know. I don't think so. These are mathematicians going wild. All right, let's see. This is all Wikipedia. Maybe I've got it wrong. So apparently, there are an infinite number of these, but and they are special. But I think there are only, what do I have in there? 18 less than 10 to the power of 18. There aren't many. It's the usual characters at the start, but then it really starts to explode hugely. I mean, this is massive differences. It's just some way of getting at many divisors. Ramanujan is in there having fun. He just couldn't help himself. And let's see. Relation to the Riemann hypothesis. All right. You never know. There are all sorts of crazy things that might pop out if you understand one of them. Yeah. Yeah. In a particular sense, has many divisors, I think. So we got a little carried away. This is, but sort of buried. There are other numbers in there, that are just like don't make sense. So I said 37 would be weird. 22 is particularly weird. But I grew up with that. I think you have that for baseball. Baseball, like what's the length of the thing? 66 or something? It's 22 times 3. Excellent. Truly boring game, I have to tell you. Truly boring game. I'm really sorry. I tried. I used to go to Fenway when I was a graduate student. I thought. Correct. Yes. They come late. They leave early. They miss the things that happen. I don't know. And I really do like sport in general, but wow, I know throwing is pretty impressive. Humans can do it amazingly, but damn, it's boring.
It's the best sport we have.
Basketball is a truly magic game, and people do unbelievable things every 10 seconds. You've got the Olympics or whatever. It's like, that was amazing what that person just said. Just watch 5 seconds of a basketball game in the middle of the season, and people will do things that just blow your mind. This is just ridiculous.
It's incredible. I mean, like, you can take, like, the best college players in the country and then play them against, like, the worst NBA players.
How Brian Scalabrine did, like, a tour of America and, like, challenged.
The challenge.
Yeah, he challenged.
I didn't know
He
that.
was, like, wanting, like,
Yeah.
make fun of his, like,
Yeah, he's this joke player on the.
Yeah.
It's actually really good.
He, like, toured around America and challenged, like, he said, anyone,
Like just like pick up stuff. Yeah.
just play one-on-one.
What's he said? A 7-foot guy, right? Isn't he? He's a big unit. Oh, okay. He's not okay. Yeah.
So he's playing, like, he won, like, all these people are challenging him, and he just.
Interesting. Yeah.
Some D1 player from University of Michigan played a one-on-one and scored like 2 points. And he was like, I thought, he's like, you know, guys, I played D1 basketball at the University of Michigan. I consider myself like pretty good at this. This guy's 40. Like, he's actually, you know, you see Scal just like he's just.
No, they are. It is a ridiculous game. It's a ridiculous game.
Which sport has the highest skill gap between like professional and
There are measures. So we look in PoCS. We've had a bunch of things. We did do. Oh, I should. You know, that'll be a fun thing. Let me finish this, and I'll bring up this paper that I should have shown you. I know sports. So soccer's traditionally been very, very hard because it's hard to measure things, but now the players are instrumented. So that's changing it. In baseball, they have that too. Again, very boring, but like the fielders, they can, they'll know where they were and how fast they ran and all that stuff. So they can do all that, but still, there's a lot of, it's Moneyball, right? It's like the place. But soccer it's been very hard to unlock, and it is a very sort of, an unusual game, right? Because there's just that sort of pressure and, right, there's much more of it acts as an organism kind of thing, right?
The data source is like translating like what announcers say into like a time series of like data.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's like one of the things looking at times, like realizing
I'll be incredibly biased.
Be interesting.
Well, maybe if you have like that.
It's something. It's an interesting thing to add. It's an interesting thing to add. But you're right. There'll be some weird.
But they're getting like PhDs and like
sure.
soccer stuff. It's like pretty cool.
Well, I mean, soccer's just. I mean, they're the most famous sports people in the world are soccer players. There's so much money in soccer. It is like, it's the thing, right? I mean, it is the thing. The second biggest team sport, I think, in the world is cricket.
Really?
India. I mean, it's 1 billion people right there who love cricket. Pakistan. Yeah. So, but cricket is deeply interesting game, actually. It's not baseball.
Convert soccer event stream data into like their custom like soccer time series data. And like a bunch of
I was trying to think about. Oh, okay, I know. So there's a little bit here. There's what's the most unpredictable games in terms of, like you have your prediction of the game going on, right? A lot of games now have this. They have a worm predicting whether they'll win, right? You can watch it in basketball. It's like the probability of winning.
Yeah, we saw that.
Right. I mean, and they do that in real time. So I mean, I can look at that, and that you get that in cricket now too. And I don't know about soccer's interesting because you have that sharp jumps, because if a goal means so much, like, it just changes the probability hugely. But I think the least predictable game was baseball, actually, because of maybe of the North American sports, because I mean, it's sort of hard to win. Like they have 60-40 records, right? I mean, it's kind of a best record, but basketball, you can get, not perfect season, but close to, and same with NFL. But
basketball's weird though because it's one of the sports where like even if you have great measurements, it's not really necessarily going to be a great metric. Your player is really good. Like Luka Doncic, you just look at how fast he's running, how high he's jumping, how strong he is. He doesn't look like a good basketball.
No, he doesn't look like when you watch him.
He's probably the best offensive player
Yeah, he looks like he would rather be on a couch watching basketball. But like it's the other thing to go back to stories though, right? We have this paper on Australian rules football from a number of years ago. It was Dylan Kiley's great student, really wonderful kid. He was the first who graduated with a master's in complex systems and data science. And this is what we were trying to get for this, the game story space. Like, what are the stories that these sport things, because they're spontaneous storytelling machines, essentially. People love sport. Not everyone loves sports, but people do really love sports. And why is that, right? So this is a game worm for a particular pair of teams, the Geelong Cats. There are tigers, lions, and cats for some reason. The cats are sort of not really, they're sort of house cats, I think. I have an uncle who loves Geelong and the Hawthorn Hawks. So this is the game differential. You can score 6 or 1 point in things. So this is an interesting game, right? Like if you're watching this, right, of course it's gone backwards and forwards there. The knock for basketball, I would say, is that, it's the last 5 minutes that often matter. And so there's a lot of it's more like a running race where, like the better team just sort of jogs along next to the other team. I once watched the Bulls with Jordan at the against the Celtics. This is in the late 90s, I guess. And it was funny. Like they started the game and Rodman's just putting his pants on. He's just standing there doing his pants up still in the middle of the court. And they just went along super easily and then just exploded in the last quarter. They were much better than the Celtics. The Celtics are just destroying themselves trying to beat, Jordan, and the crowd is happy. But it's just the last quarter. They're like, okay, now we'll do something.
It was the regular season.
It was regular season, and they, you gotta. So look, we really tried to do something with this. This is, some examples of these kinds of. There's a lot of stuff in here. We tried to find if there were these different types of games. Of course, there are different types, but did they sort of go into some network thing? Well, it turned out to be a big distribution of games, and these are some clustering things here, right? So in Australian rules, it's the number of games you win, and the second most important thing is the point differential, which is different to a lot of sports in the US, right? The point differential matters. So if you're beating a team, you score more points. You just keep going. You don't let up. NFL is kind of funny. Like if someone scores an extra touchdown on the other team, they were all upset. It's wrong. It's unmanly. They fight each other. And it's like, what do you, because sport is a proxy for war, right? It is. Anyway, and it makes lots of money. So does war, I suppose. But these are all these sort of, you can see how they're kind of moving down in the final margin. So these are absolute thrashings, right? Where one team has just destroyed the other team. This is the score differential all the way through. And these are the closest games. And then you sort of go down to different kinds of shapes, right? This is where one team's winning and then it goes the other way. This is like a failed comeback, right? There are the games where it's like they're being beaten and then it doesn't work out. This is the big comeback, right? All of these ones where they're losing by a lot. And so there are all these variations in that. So we tried to kind of, and I think we had a bigger, where is it? Yeah, like this sort of thing. Again, it's like we really tried. It's sort of a deeper, like further down, making more refinement of the space. And you can see all these kind of characteristic games. And the ones that are colored, we sort of annotated what they are. There are a few interesting ones like this that really cycle. And all of this then keys into whether the sport is interesting to people. Do they like playing it? Do people like watching it? This game has spectacular highlights, and the crowd and the commentators just go berserk. Yeah, right. I mean,
so which ones were the ones that you felt the most excited about?
So here's the thing we wanted to do, which was to have Twitter connected to this, so that we could get, and same with NFL, right? Like the game is running, and we want to look at how people are talking about it. So that would be one measure. There's also just attendance, all those things. But the problem is, I don't think we've found a good way of, there's game time. Like you look at the record and there's game time, but it's not timestamped with real time, so we can't connect it to Twitter.
Okay, dumb question. that not like a thing?
Oh, yeah. You mean, so you can look at write-ups. Yeah, right.
See like what were people
Sure.
that got a lot of comments.
So this goes to what I was trying to say about sports stories. Like, so I think NBA is interesting, like basketball is interesting because, you know, a team wins. There'll be some discussion of highlights, a little bit, who did well, who played, da da da. But NFL, like American football, basically produces stories. Like there are chapters essentially. Like the marches this way doesn't mean you don't have to like the game, but it's like there are marches this way, kind of like, and it has a real story you can talk about and describe afterwards. Basketball is incredible to watch, but the story afterwards is a little bit more. It's not like a novel, you know.
Individualistic. It's more just a bunch of characters.
I mean, you know, they're just beautiful things happen, and you describe them, but it's and how tense it was, and whatever, and close, and this, you know.
Except for the Spurs, right? They're like really into being a team. And they have the tall guy and the short guy that
That is the best way to describe
It's
those
true.
two ever.
I mean, but they was a harmonious team.
Yeah, that was a great team.
I mean, the Golden State Warriors can be like that too. I mean, it depends where they are, but
I love,
you know, because they play with joy, right? That's what they have.
I remember there was a thing like 2-3 years ago. People were like, Steph Curry broke basketball. It's like, he's just a good shooter. Basketball, man. People were upset. Yeah. People were upset.
Oh, right. This is like the number of real games to adjacent games. We really worked hard on this. I mean, and this was like, can you predict what's going to happen based on this story? And you couldn't really, you know, that was the problem. Like you'd think, I know.
That makes sense. Like, people wouldn't be that interested in, like, you'd think the game time would get cut down to
Right.
something if you could predict the outcome at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. It's a kind of game where there are enough games where it's kind of done by three-quarters time, but that happens in basketball too. Like you'll see zero probability, someone's being thrashed. But this, we weren't able to get something out of like the shape that's come before. Like, does that feed into the final result? It's a good, and there is this other work, like I said, about some sports are just less predictable, and baseball's, I think, the least predictable because it's just harder to be just super dominant in that sport. Anyway, it was a, you know, we really tried hard in this thing. Yeah, so many plots. He works for Zillow now, actually. All right, so I mean, these are just some weird. This is where, you know, we're saying like the 360, 12, they all make sense, but there are other spaces of numbers where we get it really wrong. So 22 yards in a chain, that led to all this stuff about sport, of course. Then we've got 100, which is whatever, interesting. These are, people would talk about this on the farm where I grew up, like, you know, chains and things. An acre is a furlong times a chain. And this weird stuff between American measurements and English imperial, whatever it is. Like I think there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, but 4 in the other one. Like this is little, and it's like, oh my God! Like also Europe and Australia, everything's measured in weight, which takes all that problem out. Yeah, Fahrenheit, Celsius, and Kelvin is a good one. Fahrenheit is weird because it's based on us, right? That was the idea. It was sort of based to be. It's the history of it is that those various numbers were like water boiling, I think, and blood temperature and so on. So it's kind of geared around us. But in my mind, because I grew up with both of those, like Fahrenheit's great when it's hot because you can say it's 100 or 110, and that's 120. It feels good when you say those numbers, right? Like 37. I mean, 40 is really hot, but there's basically like, it's half the dynamic range or whatever, right? So 60s, 70s, 80s all have their own character, you know, 30s, 40s, 60s, 70s. but you have to sort of say low 20s or high 20s, low 10s and high. I thought I had this somewhere else. I know these are old things I've shown you, but I wonder where. Okay, it's going to explode. There's oh, maybe it's in the sandbox. Oh yeah, that's a shame. It's in the sandbox. What's in the sandbox right now? It's a little bit of a mess. Okay. Nope. All right. It was a figures distance. No, I can't. It's not going to work. Lengths. All right, I don't know if I can find it, but it's wiki lengths, like a rude diagram. Feet, chain. A rod. That's the one I wanted, I guess. Where is that thing? Huh. Yeah, 3-chain road. There you go. Yeah, he lived out on the 3-chain road. Name of many Australian roads, referring to the width of it. The Texas chain. I can't find it. Do I want a rod? No. I don't think I can find it. There's a great graphic. Yes, that's it. Awesome. Look at the madness of this. So this is metric here, so kilometers down to micrometers. So there's a TWIP. There are 20 TWIPs in a point. I don't know what that is. Peakers, lines at poppy seed, barley corns. I mean, took a while to sort things out for us, right? I mean, and you can see why people are happy with this. Yeah, fathom is 6 feet, right? So 2 yards. So that's all connected. We've got cubits in here. Oh, I love this. It's great. And you can see all this, human stuff here, right? Finger, digit, now, foot, of course.
I'm so annoyed that spans a measurement.
It's not great. L, that's not
Spindle. Hands for horses.
right. So right, kind of like doing this. Is that you hold your hand like that? I think you have to figure out what your hand is in terms of the right. You have to scrunch it the right way. I know what's, and they're a little bit off, right? Can we connect them? Not that well, I don't think, right? We'd have to go from, what is it? So Schaffman, so there's 3 in a cubit, and then right 5 in a pace, which of course 2 paces in a grade, and then 4 in a rope. So I can't. This one's a bit longer than this one, and then there should be a chain by itself or not? Oh, maybe they are. Yeah, okay, interesting. And of course, mile and nautical mile. Got to have a league as well. Awesome, really nice. But I don't. That's a bit, because isn't that a printer's measure, like N and M and L, right? Like N, M, L. I thought that was. Oh, maybe it's not. There's the width of an N, the width of an M, and an X, right? EX. They're all little measurements, which are excellent in Scrabble. Yeah, ancient measurement. Okay, for measuring cloth. All right, there you go. Okay. Ah, it's the Viking L. The Vikings. It's 1.5 feet, 18 inches. Wow. The L was originally a cubit, later replaced by the cloth L or double L. This is fantastic. Yeah, I don't know why I don't have this in. Oh, I guess I did have it in. I did have it in some other slides. I think I know where it is. Yeah, yeah. Of course, there's the Flemish L, the French L, the Polish L, the Danish L, Swedish L. They're all different. I mean, there's a beauty to all of this, right? But I mean, once you and then of course, if you bring the world together, you want to have things connected so that things don't break or whatever. I mean, railway lines are like this, right? People, you would literally, I think, actually going from New South Wales to Queensland at some point, you had to change what the carriages were on because they had a different width for the track, which is bonkers, right? Of course, we still have a world where some people drive on the right of the road and some people drive on the left, which is weird. Was it Sweden that changed? So, all of that, like that moving towards everyone doing this, having sort of the similar standards, that kind of progress, well, or change over time is something to track. Like, and eventually you get to something like Facebook, where everyone is like billions of people experience the same interface in connecting with other people. And a lot of people can speak English now, mostly better than the English. But which is weird. I mean, a lot of people speak Chinese, a lot of people speak Hindi. So, I mean, what happens is there's a goodness to people understanding each other, but there's sort of also a problem where it allows for the whole disinformation thing. I mean, this is a big system kind of story. Like everything gets connected, and measurements and communication methods are really fundamental to that.
Do you remember at the beginning of Hitchhiker's Guide when Dr. Adams introduces the battlefish, and he says that
Right.
like it consequently opened up communication between any species and is therefore been the cause of like more war than any other kind of technological
right.
innovation ever was.
So is it? Yeah. So is it safer to not understand? Isn't this the origin of the word barbarism, for example? Right? It's like supposed to be like you couldn't understand what they were saying. It's like blah 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 blah, and it becomes a reference to barbarians. I mean, there are other words like that too, which is basically we don't know what they're saying. So you would think that would be a problem, right? There'd be a lot more fighting, maybe, but maybe it's the other way around. You can actually understand what's in their heads. Now you really need to.
The problem is you probably assume people are actually being nicer than they are, not the other way around.
Just the universe of Bostonians up there.
Oh my god! There's a tapestry. I went, and who's from Boston? Who's from like Boston? Anyone? Or from like that? Anyway, yeah. I mean, I lived there for 6 years, and it is funny. Like your average person on the street is it's not a good interaction. It's just like radiating hate, and doesn't mean they're not good people underneath, but just a sort of general kind of interaction is not good. You don't know. I mean, but New Yorkers like are really nice people, just on average on the street. They're very friendly, and things can happen, but it's like generally speaking, they're just really polite. Like, oh, do you need a hand or whatever? Say hello to each other and stuff. And Bostonians just, and then of course they get in cars, and then the monster comes out. I do think it's still the pedestrians that are probably
Pedestrians.
They're part of it. They're also evil as well. So it's just like it goes out into.
Pedestrians and cars are a problem.
Well, there's pedestrian car interactions are pretty nasty. The bike culture though too. I mean, which I went through, which was like you basically it's a war.
You will get hit by a car.
Sure. I got hit by a young woman driving a very nice BMW who was a student at BU, and it all checked out. And as soon as she thought I was not dead, she drove away, which also checked out. But I was a bit dead actually. But anyway, so yeah.
My partner was crossing the street and this person was honking really aggressively at him in a crosswalk. And he yelled, "I hope you're late." And they yelled, "I hope you die."
They're so bad. They're so bad. They're so bad. Well, and the thing about drivers there is in my experience, they're just unpredictable. They're just deeply unpredictable. Like people in New York will drive fast and whatever, but they generally kind of obey things. Like you can kind of have a sense because it's a little more intense. But Boston, anything can happen. U-turns in the middle of whatever. Just yeah, right.
It's really confusing to drive in. Like to be fair to the drivers, it is really, really confusing. It's easy to get in a place where you're like going the wrong way and you don't understand how to get out of it.
So when I was first there, I was talking to someone who was from there and just saying, this place is crazy, because I'm almost getting killed on my back all the time, and they had three reasons for why it's the way it is. Maybe I've told you this, but it's like three reasons, and I can't remember the first two, but it was clearly building up to the third one, which was that because there's the filling in of the bay, and so there's roads that used to be on the edge of it, so that they're weirdly designed. But basically, all of that horrible layout and whatever, and the one ways, and this was like, it was Puritans building suffering into the infrastructure. It's really good.
That's like the,
I mean, it's well designed.
the QAnon people who believe that like 9/11 is an occult ritual. Like they believe it like.
I haven't heard that. That's particularly. Please tell me, because it's incredibly upsetting. But yeah, but please.
Every time whenever there's like a big mass attack or something really bad happens,
An occult ritual.
it's like an intentional sacrifice to Satan by Satanists. So 9/11 they think was the biggest like mass occult ritual ever pulled off in the history of mankind.
Wow.
Right? So I wonder if they would think that the Boston
Sure.
suffering is like an occult ritual because it's like
infrastructure
over
version.
time, but it's a lot of people over time. So
Sure.
it's got to count.
You're building hell into. Yeah. Well, they did have the witches, right? So that was near. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a bad place. Yeah. Wow, I hadn't heard that.
Sorry.
No, that's the first time I ever saw a 9/11 conspiracy theory thing was down on Church Street. Someone had a big sign
What was it for?
saying it was an inside. It was the metal melted in a funny way, and it was an inside thing, and all this sort of stuff. And the anger I had was, I mean, it's just, it's but of course, I thought it was just sort of like this is some one-off person, but I've had students sort of indicate things like that, actually. Some stuff about how we don't know about the metal and the beams and whatever, and jet fuel, whatever, some stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty blood boiling and freezing at the same time, but reality. I mean, look, the great problem is, how do we figure out the truth, right? I mean, this is science right now, and then how do we tell it, and how do we kind of get it out there so that people will, read that? I did have this. I don't know if I can get it to work, but sort of to that point. I try to get this thing to run again. Maybe it will die. This was supposed to be all very funny. This is from ages ago, right? Right. You're gonna blow up. Yeah. Let me just look at this prop. There's something exploding in there. Coda. All right, let me just see if we can do this. What is that? Describe. I don't know what has happened to this. Oh. In a superficial sense, yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. They might not like you underneath. I don't know what happened to that. Um, I mean, I'm being very, very rude, obviously. Yeah, I don't know why this isn't working. Anyway, let me at least try to open this one. So this is an older one. Poor old Pratchett, what are you doing? Yeah, I do. I know this is going to seem very obvious, perhaps, but I kind of I just want to say this, right? So this is something I sort of developed over time, and I know I've presented you before probably, but um, basic science, right? So, and this is the first part, and I sort of present this because I feel like students over the years have trouble sorting out what science is, but actually also a lot of professors and academics don't. They get stuck in one part of this, and they don't really, and they have fetishes of their fields. Their way, I'll use that word. The ways these ways of doing science that they think is right. You know, so. But this is this is a really hard thing to do, and this is the word in here is taste. There is a taste you can develop for what to work on. It takes a long time, what to think about, and you see it like, oh, that's a good, that's a this person's doing this thing. You're like, that's good. That's a there's some value to it, and that's obviously going to be sort of personal, or whatever. But there is something there. Because people certainly go off the deep end and look at tiny, unimportant things. I realize it's part of science; it's fun, but finding meaningful stuff to work on, even if it's about me, and this is sort of the onus on us now is to work with all this data, especially, I mean, not just about social phenomena, but everything, ecology, whatever it is. We've got lots of stuff to figure out, and it's hard. It is a transition for a lot of these sciences. They've gone from data scarce to data rich. And then these two parts, describe and explain. This to me is basic science. This is sort of the zero thought of thing, even though it's point one, but this is the two steps. A lot of people sort of sit off somewhere else and say, what's your hypothesis? What's the question? Like, we've discussed this a little bit. Like they have that framing and they're very stuck on it. I think that is fair if the science you're inside is super well developed and you just kind of in the filling out the details. And if you get through these, then you can create and share and do all these good things. But this is the weird thing, I suppose, that we're in this period, which is only the last 15 years with deep learning and so on, is that people are doing things where they're avoiding this or they don't have to think about this. They're in this space, which is a bit weird. They're like reproducing, making a thing do a thing, whatever it is, and they have no idea what it's doing. They can't really describe its insides, and we have algorithms running around in the world that are, potentially that are doing fun things, like amazing things, like telling you what to buy, or which account to look at, or giving you all sorts of things to sort of find out about. But at the same time, potentially really doing a lot of damage, and we don't. They're not well understood. Be good people. So this one I kind of, right. Yeah, that's also complicated. But I think for me, I thought, the next generation would all be just better people. That was sort of the arc of the world. But that's not always true. There are humans, right? Yeah. I was more worried about people my age and above as being the bad characters. But so yeah, no, you're also humans, and therefore. How old is he?
Like early 30s, mid 30s.
Okay, yeah. Well done. Well done. Yeah, and there'll be an eternal supply of such people. So and things can go backwards. Right? I mean, it's not a we're as humanity sort of, I think, slowly getting out of general terribleness, but the potential for regression is gigantic. It's power and control is a big part of it, which and a lot of it's manifested through stories. So again, it goes back to like figuring out what the right thing to do is, and what's true, and then being able to communicate that. That is incredibly hard, right? So you can have a fantastic idea, engineer something, come up with whatever, but if you can't get people to adopt it, and I'm not saying like I have some special skill with that, but personally, I mean, it's just sort of it's important to understand. I mean, I think there's a world where you think, the chances of succeeding are zero. There's other ones where you think if you just do good things and they will succeed, which is true. Social construction is everywhere, and understanding that is, it's tough, but it's key, right? So no guarantees. Yeah. Anyway, that's why I don't know why I've lost that in my other sets of slides, but I mean, I'm just trying to give a short one page, like a tiny little thing. This is a set of maxims or whatever to like a little recipe for doing the right thing.
If you had to like make a hierarchy of your personal goals in your life, what would be the top goal?
Yeah. No, it's all right. I guess there are some shifts, I suppose, that have happened. You get older and you have children and things like that. And things happen in the world and all those things. But I'm someone who just did want to understand everything. So that's still kind of there. Like so there's part of it is, I'm deeply interested in physics as well, but I found like it wouldn't be satisfying personally for me to be in that space. Like there was right when I was younger, I mean, I did 6 years of undergrad because I didn't know what I was doing. Right, so I did 2 degrees and at the same time, and the physics side. It became clear to me. One of them was electrical engineering, which I'm like no, and but the physics and math side. But physics was the appealing thing in all of that, and string theory was a big deal sort of at the time, but you start to get the sense like you could spend your whole life on that and maybe not really feel like you contributed much. And I think the big thing for me was getting this book on complex systems. It really was. And I was bitten by, as I say, my he became a neurosurgeon friend, a radioactive neurosurgeon. He handed me this book, and it as I recall, Andrew Markoff, he said, "Chaos is over. You should read this book." And it did have that feel. It was like Glick had written this book on chaos, which was enormously impactful for my generation of people coming up as being scientists. I also had no idea that you could be a professor, that you could be any of these things. I had no idea. Like I'm a first gen kind of, like I really didn't. I remember meeting people who had become friends and finding out they had a professor for a dad or something, and I'm like, what do you like? That's cheating, obviously. Like also impossible. Like who even are you? Yeah. But the complexity thing, that seemed doable. I mean, this is the early 90s. It seemed like, there are computer stuff coming along, right? So people are making little fun simulations. This is obviously ancient stuff, but um, it was starting to lift into this different space. And of course, the web, what we call the internet now, but the web comes along, so that starts to change things. But it's really around 2000 where my PhD actually was about big data. And it felt good, and I felt bad about doing it because it felt like, like that's not the right, because, physicists were like, you're supposed to have a beautiful idea. And I mean, everyone sort of does this, right? Like somehow you figure out how to, I mean, Marx is in a room typing away or whatever. Like, I mean, how is that possible? So, but, so it's been, in retrospect, an incredibly interesting, dangerous, crazy 30 years of just sort of the world just kind of exploding, right? Like in what's possible. I've had to, what was it, 15 years ago here, the head of sociology saying like, it's no different with the internet. Nothing's different. It's just some more data. Like the world is not different. And I'm like, and this is someone who studied the internet. It's like, good God, the connectivity of the world, and like you guys grow up with something like Wikipedia, right, or YouTube. I mean, it's just a completely different experience to anything humans have had before. I mean, it really is. I grew up on a farm, right, and there's just we have dictionaries and those sorts of things to look up, and I think of the 80s as sort of the last silent decade in the sense that maybe walkie-talkies or CBs or and there's phones and stuff, but you didn't carry a phone around with you. That was still not a possibility. I mean, maybe the army had one, like sitting on a big battery pack, and they could so the change has been enormous, and I think we've sort of adapted over time. But I mean, underneath it all was just trying to find what, I mean, people are working on different places, of course. Like the origin of life is deeply interesting, but then once it's all sort of all underway, you have ecological systems, and of course, people plus whatever. Where is that all going? And I don't have any great answers, but like the crazy things, like the Constitution is written in the 1700s, like this little rule set, and then it gets added to, which people sort of do and don't remember. Like there's some amendments are really important, but some aren't, or whatever. And you keep saying, well, it wasn't in the Constitution, right? I mean, this is what's happening right now, the sort of argument that something wasn't in the Constitution. A lot of things were not in the Constitution, but something that was in the Constitution was that this is something that has to evolve. I mean, there are only, 13 states at the start? What is it, 12, 13? I mean, that was in there too. It's like, oh, there will be more states. Like that's a ridiculously difficult instruction set to write down. So what are the best ones for now? Like how do you, I don't know. I mean, how do we have a good world? It's
Originalism is the stupidest philosophy. It's so stupid.
Very powerful.
So dumb.
It's very powerful. It's very
Originalism, the idea that like what's in the Constitution is the only thing that should be in the Constitution, which is like exactly what the Constitution says should not be the case.
right. They were very
even by your own.
right. Yeah, there was that idea. Rip it up, which would have been an amazing rule to put in. Like to actually make it a hard rule. I mean, maybe it would have been changed, but like a hard rule, like, okay, here's the 30-year cycle. Put them out.
That would be real scary to allow someone to just completely rewrite it.
I mean, all your worst Supreme Court justices are essentially rewriting the Constitution right now, and they're also all originalists.
It's an operating system. They act in that way, of course, because they're trying to do something else.
Right, but once it gets interpreted a certain way, then that's binding precedent. So they kind of do get to like overwrite shit.
including other things that are supposedly precedent, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. No, so how, I mean, yeah, an interesting point my wife brought up the other day. She was listening to something about, this is an interesting thing, just a thing to think about. How you behave, like, do you act in a way where it's loyalty to a group is the thing that dominates your way of behaving, or is it to, overarching kind of things like justice and truth and fairness and the more abstract things that should hopefully apply to everyone, right? But a lot of people are very identitarian, and I think that, when there's a sense of scarcity of resources, that things are going to run out, which is something we talk about forever, in history. It's true. It's happened. The replacement story, that is incredibly powerful. Oh my God. I mean, that is, that's existential, right? So,
What they're taking our jobs thing is.
they're taking our existence, actually.
Yeah, the great white replacement. So the idea
No more white
that,
people.
white people are being genocided. You hear terms called white genocide.
Yeah,
And it's like
it's like Channel 5 all the time. We talk about this.
14 words. If you see the 14 words, those are like we must secure the future for our white children. I don't know if that's working, but you're like, that's this.
That's what it is.
It's like, yeah.
I mean, I grew up with white people. Not so great.
You got 3 Vermonters in here who come with the same thing.
Yeah. But look, I mean, it explodes my mind. I mean, I'll just say, like, I've had people in meetings will say, there's one talk I remember where, and I understand what they're doing. There's a student sort of started off by saying, "Oh, well, I'm a 9th generation Vermonter, like anyone else," like, and they lay that out in front, and it's actually deeply up. I understand, but it's also, I mean, I know that how they're whatever, but
I think it's weird to have your family live in one state. I think it's weird to have a lot of pride in that.
I don't know.
it's tricky. It's tricky.
It can be harmless if you are a little bit self-aware.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask. That's a lot.
I mean, but no, Julie's point, like, a bit of this helps, right? But not to the point where you take up sticks and stones.
I think it's fun. Yeah. I'm not like, open carrying or anything.
But I will say, like, this is the first time I've heard. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Most of the time when someone's a 6th generation Vermonter, first thing you hear about them.
Right.
You see, that is, I agree with that.
Well, but look, this then, a lot of people say things that are very close to you, that are not just close to, but are essentially some form of eugenics. All sorts of people say this sort of thing. Like, you just listen to when they say, I mean, 2 like beautiful celebrities have a kid or something, or 2 famous sportsmen have a kid, or these people are from here or whatever. There's a lot of stuff where it's like, oh, okay, so it's there's some dancing around that, right? That there's something about where you were. Yeah.
I also, for some reason, think it's a stranger thing to do for a state than maybe a city. Like, if you're like really excited about your city, I think that makes a lot of sense. Unless it's like a geographic place.
But like Vermont, right? I mean, like in many places, isn't the joke here like Burlington's a nice place because it's so close to Vermont? That's the rural. Have you heard that one? That's the rural joke, right? Like, look, I grew up in a rural area, and it was like the cities are bad actors, like they're dangerous, and also they don't care about rural people. Like, that was the general sentiment, which was also a mystery when you're a kid. Like, this is the best place to live in the world. Like, why wouldn't they want to come out here 300 miles from Melbourne and teach at a little school? Which my mother and my grandmother did, because they were sent there. Yeah, my grandmother was sent to teach in a tiny one-room school in the corner of a paddock, in the corner of a field. There's nothing else around it. It's a corner of a field. Yeah, she couldn't drive a car. She just lived on the edge of a desert, basically. Yeah, your existence is contingent on very strange, weird, random things that happen between people going back all the way back, and so I don't know. I mean, I would also just say, make some money, make some money. I don't think I earned more than $18,000 a year until I was 30 because I did my PhD was 6 years. So, I was too much. I'm a thinker person, so I was sort of stuck in all of that and learned to live off nothing. I'm vegan for a couple of reasons for 20 years, but one of them is because I couldn't afford meat, good meat. Especially when I came to the US, I'm like, this stuff is not right. Like, this is not right. What is like this is not good. So I mean, that's a problem. But what I really worry about in the world, right, is, the pyramid that's growing, right? The pyramid scheme of existence is so high now, and now, and people fall back into like, let's have the king thing. Elon Musk will save Ukraine with the Starlink, or whatever, or Bill Gates will cure us, or something, or put chips in, or kill us, right? Like, there are people with these supposedly outside powers, and they do have a lot of money, so. And this, like, the US was, the great appeal of the US for a lot of people was like, that's not the game, the no king thing, right? Right? Didn't they have a debate about that, whether Washington would be a king versus a president?
Yeah, they debated calling the president His Majesty.
Jeez.
They call him Mr. President. Like, it's the same.
It's not the same, but Trump would have been even worse if he was in his Majesty.
If it was King Trump.
With scepters and crowns and stuff. Yeah. It's, what? Look at the English. Like, as a, right, Mr. King President or something. Yeah, Mr. President. Or,
Chairman.
of course, yeah, the possibility of a female was a zero. Well, of course, the thing that happens in the parliamentary system is the prime minister can be just totally torpedoed by their own. It's a much, vote of no confidence gone, which is weird. No, I thought you were going to say a different one. Is that not with the Scottish guy? No.
It has
Lots of swearing?
Yes.
Yeah,
has
okay.
The guy who played
Doctor Who? Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's so good.
I haven't seen it. I've seen clips of it, and I appreciate it.
It's really good. But there's a lot of votes with no confidence.
Oh, sure. Ejection. Yeah. Which you don't. Yeah. No. The president has become more of a king-like character. Obama was like supposed to be a savior. Sort of has that kind of feel. Like, once you have your president in power, they will issue all of these things, and everything will be transformed, right? Which is actually a bad thing. Like, if they have so much ability to just want one person to just go and change the fabric of society, right? Which sort of has happened. So that's a little bit. Part of that is my Australian identity, which is you kind of grew up there, like, the English are the bad guys, and we love to destroy them in cricket or whatever, and like, we don't. The Queen is still on the Australian dollar, sort of thing, right? They haven't quite gotten rid of it. Yeah, it's the same with Canada.
I don't think Liz cares about anything at this point. I think she's just existing.
She has done. Yeah. I will say that she has done a pretty good job for what she's being given, but going on, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's just it's a eugenics thing. Like, why? Have a reality TV show for the next queen.
I hope she lives like very, very long, so we don't have to have them be able to.
Charles?
It's funny because they had the whole Brexit thing, but like, her family's German.
Have you've watched?
I don't know. People are so dumb.
Yeah, I know.
Have you watched Blackadder?
Yes.
There's a line in Blackadder, right? He goes, was that right? There's a prince? Isn't there a prince in there? He's like, so anyway, he calls him out on, like, you're all Germans, right? The Saxe Coburgs.
Yeah.
A little tricky. First World War, Second World War.
Yeah.
Not great. Yeah.
And yet Brexit.
Yeah, Brexit. Yeah. All right. Stucker is amazing. Okay, so that's it for whatever we did here. It was a different kind of thing. We may have PoCS 3D, so let's it'll be PoCS 3D, yeah, which will be more of a thing where we just mess around with stuff. Yeah. Right? Was it? It's great. I love it. Oh my god. No, I love it. It's great. It's good. It's good. Yeah. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, and we've sort of ended without masks and somewhat functional, but yeah, another unexpectedly. Anyway, there's a lot more to do, obviously. So good. All right, but I want to, I hope we can get some papers out of all of this, and you guys pursue the things you've worked on, and we're going to try to make some more of these story tools. Right.
I love some very biased thoughts on GitLab.
Oh, you don't like GitLab?
Yeah.
Damn. Right. I thought all the youngsters loved the GitLab.
No, not on GitLab. I like biased thoughts about like how to like make these tools accessible and usable.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, like the stuff I pushed is like a merge request. Somebody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You have to like approve it.
Oh, I see.
We have like a civil discussion.
Yeah, you have to.
Really sick stuff.
Okay. I didn't quite understand it, but it seems like this was a good thing. Okay, right. Yeah.
Well, it's like we should talk about like the open source people too, because like what if these when you would like import with geometry, it would just like work.
Oh yeah. In one of the Python installations that you have, right? No, Python's great. It's no problem. Random.random.
And then we can all just like swear which had right the wrong one.
I wouldn't probably do that, but I would just write it.
Well, it's not like
I mean, especially if it starts processing stuff. I'm not going to use.
Well, I don't think.
If you make some simple R1s, that could really be good.
I also already did it, I should say. Like, I already had it. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, why would I wrap up that function?
No, that's not
All right.
wrap.
All right, be good, humans. Be good.